What's up? I'm Kat Popper. Gang, I got to tell you something. Editing these interviews takes me forever because I feel like I need to keep the episodes on the shorter side for them to be marketable. But all of my guests have been so generous and loose and fun when they talk to us and they tell us so much good shit. I drive myself crazy trying to edit them down. So to ease my heartache, I release an audio-only version of the interviews. They're full length, and you can find them where you can find podcasts. Today's guest, Colin Hay, whom you may know is a brilliant singer and songwriter and the lead singer of the band Men at Work, is an old pal of my producer, Brian Bovito. They've toured together for years, working with Ringo Starr and his all-star band where Brian does sound and Colin plays guitar. On this show, Brian is normally off camera doing tech crap and hassling us about lighting and sound, and he's kind of mean. But I asked him to join us on camera to talk to Colin with my co-host Joe Hudak, who is a senior editor guy at Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Now, I was hella nervous because we were the first of many interviews Colin had to do that day. And I may have cried. It was just once. And Joe took a few on the chin from all of us, but I would like to say that we had a ball, and I think you will too. Is this what we're all wearing? I just want to make sure.
This is what we're wearing, yeah.
Look at me. I'm doing my shirt up because of what you said. I think I find is that better?
Do you have a bolo tie?
No.
Oh.
No, I gave them all away.
Anyway, I'm a big fan, and so I'm Kat. I'm an idiot. And
what's the band? What band do you play in again?
Well, I'm a freelance guy, so I played with Jack White, and I have a trio with Nora Jones.
Wow.
We all play instruments we don't know how to play.
Yeah.
That's
what most of us do.
I think that's what most of us do. And but I like doing this, talking to people. And Joe it says senior editor guy at Rolling Stone.
Senior editor guy at Rolling Stone. Hello, Colin. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Hello, Joe.
Thank you for doing this.
You look as if you tied one on last night. Did you?
Oh my gosh.
He lives in Nashville. I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
It does. It's alcohol is in the air here. It permeates the air.
He gets redder.
Alcohol and God.
That's right. Yes.
They're very into God and that part of the world.
Well, you'll be playing here this summer on your tour.
Do you want to talk about your tour? Do you want to talk about that?
I don't care. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. I mean, I don't know much about the tour, but I know that I have a tour with my band, and then more Ringo, and then there's a summer tour with Toad the Wet Sprocket and Men at Work, and then there's a tour of Australia.
People must go apeshit for you guys in Australia, or is it just the same everywhere?
Australia's weird, because we were so huge for a minute in the early 80s. And I think that a lot of kind of Australians, they didn't really like that much. They like it if you're successful, but not too successful. We had that song called Down Under, which was kind of like poking fun at the stereotypical Australian traveling overseas. And so people either loved that song or they got embarrassed by it, and didn't like it. I mean, it's going to be interesting because I'm going to go there for the first time for many, 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 many years under the name Men at Work. And I'm the only guy, from the original band that's still playing as Men at Work. So it'll be interesting to see whether we have an audience and whether they turn up and what the attitude is towards us when we go down there. I mean, I really love, I love Australia. I love it. I love living in California. I mean, I came here in 1989, 90. So I've been here ever since.
Wow. Well, I've been in your house.
Oh,
you weren't there, but
I wasn't
I'm just
here.
kidding. You had a party.
Oh, were you a robber?
No, you were totally there. You had a party, and somebody I was out there with, you invited them, and we had a really nice conversation. And I'm totally such a fan. I just geek out over you. You're brilliant. Your voice, your songwriting, big fan.
Thank you very much. It's a nice thing to wake up to.
Okay, good. So we're your first.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
That's the first.
You have a day of it, and we have to mind what you say. I remember I did an interview with Nora. It was like a whole day of press, and we were joking about how I was getting a bikini wax somewhere, and they played one of Nora's songs, and I was making a joke about it during the interview, and they titled the interview like Nora gets off to her own music. It was so gross, and I thought you can't have fun.
Who did that?
I don't remember.
Online they did that.
Yeah, in the article. Joe, explain yourself. Why do people do that? Why does press fuck up so bad like that?
I don't know. It's the press game is much different today. Than it was because of in the past. Despite my complexion, I'm actually quite young. And Colin, I remember
back in the joking before.
I know, of course. And back in the day, no one had the social media aspect, and everyone had to do this and click, click, click. Back in the day, you just enjoy reading it in the newspaper or a rock and roll magazine or something.
Strangely enough, I'm getting a bikini wax after this myself.
Well, Joe is one of the good ones, by the way.
Oh, gosh.
No, you are. You're solid gold, and you never hang people out to dry like that. And it's one of the things that I love about you. And also your complexion.
Thank you.
I also watched your documentary, which I came in to talk to Brian, and I was crying.
She was.
You talked about, this starting over, and you said, that it was difficult to get anybody to pay attention to you. You're older. So it's like this weird ripoff where, not like a pretty package for the labels or whatever, but you're writing the best shit of your life.
I think that's true. And not only of myself, but it's true of a lot of people where you're writing things that, you think to yourself, well, is this just not very good? Is that why people are not paying attention to it? Because, say, for example, that song, I Just Don't Think I'll Ever Get Over You, a song that I wrote, and I had it on a record called Transcendental Highway in the mid-90s. And then Zach Braff took it and put it in the Garden States film, and then it was on the soundtrack. So it came out through Sony, and it went platinum. And I thought, and that song, for example, gained a huge audience, and I thought to myself, it's not the fact that the material's not up to standard, it's the fact that just people never get to hear it, so that's the ongoing frustration. Nobody's really getting to hear what in fact is your best work.
I can only imagine that inclusion on the Garden State soundtrack introduced you to an entirely new audience, right?
I went into a coffee shop in Springfield, Illinois, and this younger guy who was maybe 20 said, "Oh man, I love your music, man." I said, "Oh, thank you very much." He said, "Overkill's my favorite song." And I said, "Great, oh, thank you." And then the older guy who was next to him, the barista who was maybe 50 or something, he said, "You know who that is?" And he goes, "Yeah, he was in Scrubs." and the older guy said, "What's Scrubs?" And he goes, he was in Men at Work. And the young guy goes, "What's Men at Work?"
Colin, I'm usually just the behind-the-scene guy, as you know, but Kat wanted me to be present for this one because of our friendship.
You're behind the scenes. You're behind the scenes, except when you walk past me, and you always just say something on the way past.
Like what?
Sometimes
like
I do that.
You'll say something like, "Where's your shorts?"
Wait, there's a story behind that I would love to hear.
Well, it was at Ringo's 70th birthday party, and in New York, and I was talking most of the night with Brian Johnson, who I just love to death, and I don't know him very well, but I met him a couple of times, and he's such a beautiful, beautiful spirit, and Paul came up, McCartney, and he was with a couple of people, and he looked at Brian Johnson and he said, "Where's your shorts?" And Brian just goes, "That's the other guy. That's the other guy."
He thought he was Angus.
You're a funny guy. Like, your shows are hilarious, and you're just a born entertainer.
My father was funny. He was very talented, although we really had a very difficult relationship. I had a lot of problems with my father when I was kind of like 19 or 20 years old, and so I got very hurt by that. And then later in life, I tried to confront him about that, and he didn't want to know about it. So I figured, well, I either have a superficial relationship with my father, or I have no relationship at all. So I decided to have a superficial one where you just go for coffee and you talk. You don't go anywhere. You don't go to any depth, because if you do, that's where the problems are. That was one of the worst things I did, was to tell him that I was an alcoholic. Because he didn't buy that for a second. He wasn't having that at all. Because it reflected on him as far as he was concerned. So he thought, well, what have I done that I've got an alcoholic son? Since he died, you kind of, you let whoever you love inhabit you. So when I do the solo shows, I feel like we're both doing them. So it gives me kind of more ammunition in a way. Because I kind of let my father speak as well when I'm doing the shows. But it makes me feel good to know that I can imagine him being on stage with me.
God damn it, again with you, Colin Hay. You got me fucked up.
Nice page boy haircut, by the way, Kath.
This is a Louise Brooks, thank you. Louise
Brooks.
Thank you.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you. I'm pulling it together. So do you guys, when you're touring with Ringo, like, I know you guys engage a lot, but you guys are obviously not on the same bus, or do you just do fly dates?
Whoa. They're not on a bus.
Occasionally we have to get on a bus to go somewhere, like a few hundred yards. But apart from that, it's Ringo Air, which spoils you for all other forms of transport.
So you guys, it's not the kind of thing where you like ever see each other in each other's boxers or any of that road shit. Like, this is like top tier. Was that weird? Did I make it weird?
I don't think there's any boxer viewing moments. Although there are some when we're getting changed to get on stage.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a glimpse of just the top of someone's crack. where you inadvertently see someone's. Oh, you go. Oh.
One thing I haven't ever asked you about we talked about Largo a little bit when you were really playing there a lot at the old location. Did that happen after that Garden State soundtrack, or were you already doing shows at Largo?
I started doing shows at Largo in '91, and they're some of the best nights I've ever had in my life.
Those were pretty special evenings there, to say the least. You never knew who was going to show up.
I was upstairs at Largo, and the guy on the door came out and he goes, fucking McCartney's in the room, And I said, oh yeah, sure he is. And Flanagan said, he is actually. And then I walked downstairs, and he was just standing by the kitchen. He goes, oh, there you are, man. Yeah, great. Really cool. Yeah, great. Hey, we're a bit jet lagged, Don't be upset. We might have to leave. I said, stay for 2 songs. And it was okay. So it was when he was first dating Heather Mills, give you an idea how long ago it was. So yeah, they stayed the whole night. So that was a very exciting evening for me. A few years after that Largo gig, they called me again and they said, we want to come to your gig on the Canyon Club, which was in wherever it is, South Thousand Oaks or wherever it is. They played the show, and then afterwards we go into this, VIP bar, the band, and I look at the bar, and it looked like something out of The Shining. There was just the barman drying glasses, and McCartney standing at the bar going, hey, how you doing, fellas? Yeah, great, really cool, man. Yeah. Come on over here, great, So it was like hallucinogenic almost. We walked over and I said, there's McCartney, and he was just there by himself, standing there on his own. And so he held court for like an hour and told all these stories. He was very generous with his time. And I said, what are you doing over here? And he said, oh, I'm doing a record, finishing a record. And I said, oh, it's a bit different from making records, isn't it, the old days? And he proceeded to tell me what it was like in the old days. Well, I could have stood there all night. He just goes, yeah, I'd have a song, and I'd go and pick up John, and he'd have a song. We get on the bus, go to the studio. He'd play me his song, and I'd play in my song. And, George and Ringo hadn't even heard the songs. We'd get to the studio, and I'd play the song for George, and he'd cop the chords, and Ringo would tap on a table. And a man with a white coat would come in and say, right, lads, you're up. We'd have to go and play the song and record it. There'd be a couple like that before lunch, a couple after lunch. It was fast, fast. I said, yeah, that is fast. And then there was a pregnant pause in the conversation, and they said, we want to come to your house. I said, well, I'm going on tour on Thursday. And they said, well, we'll come on Wednesday. And I said, oh, okay. I said, do you want me to make you something to eat? And they said, yeah. I said, so what, you could say that you're coming for dinner then? And he goes, yeah. So on the Wednesday I made food and had the dinner and ate the food. And after we finished eating, he picked up all the plates and he took all the plates into the kitchen. And I had another private moment to myself just then where I just looked into the kitchen. I just thought, fucking Paul McCartney's doing my dishes. And, and there was a token effort too. He was, he was just, he wasn't really cleaning them properly,
So we hate Paul McCartney.
No.
What me and Joe are doing is, I actually have a book called Jazz Anecdotes, and it's anecdotes written about, famous jazz musicians from the 20s on, but it's written by sidemen about the people they worked for, right? And I was like, we need to have one of these for rock music, because think about all the time we're backstage, sitting around at festivals, like meeting people you would never meet.
And it's always like for 10 minutes or so, where you kind of talk with somebody and then you leave, and it's a strange thing. Usually at festivals, and you don't see them. Apart from that, you only see them at festivals, different festivals around the world.
But did you, when you were younger, or when you guys were on the scene, did you meet any of your heroes and have an interesting experience with any of them? Or
well, I always tell the story, but when we won the Grammy for Best New Artist in 1983, whenever it was, our dressing room was next to Miles Davis, which was next to Lena Horne, which was next to Ella Fitzgerald, which was next to, all these famous people, and there was us, and I was standing on the side of the stage watching Jerry Lee Lewis and Ray Charles and Little Richard playing a trio together. They played this trio of piano stuff, and then when they finished playing, Little Richard ran off the stage and he ran straight up to me and said, "How was I? How was I?" And I just looked at this this magnificent creature, and I just went, "Oh, you were great." He goes, "I know it was great, but could you feel me? Could you feel me?" And then he just walked off. And he walked off, but he turned around and he said, "Nice coat."
Nice coat.
That's the only Little Richard story that I have that we can use. They're all filthy. Filthy.
Yeah. I remember, sorry, I'm butting in.
No.
Sorry, I had a great story about when Malcolm McLaren was producing an album, and James Brown was in the room, and someone was trying to play the bass to this, because it was they were trying to put a 3/4 on top of a 4/4 and make it work, and the bass player was having problems, and James Brown grabbed the bass and he said, "Give me that bass." He grabs the bass and he starts playing the bass. Then after a few minutes, he just put it in and goes, "I know the note that I'm looking for, and it ain't on that bass."
Oh my God.
Shut it down. That's the best story I've ever heard.
And he also at one point, he looked at my friend Robbie and James, and he looked at him and he said, "I'm the only man alive who can look directly into the sun."
Oh my God.
God bless James.
How do you keep it together when James Brown says some crazy shit to you? How do you keep it together? Do you just like imagine the saddest thing you...
Friends of mine promoted James Brown in Australia, brought him down to Australia, and he said, "Well," he said, let me ask you." He said, "Let me ask you something, James." And he said, "Mr. Brown," and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Brown." He said, "You can call me James." Sometimes it's a lot of fun talking to people. It can be great fun, and then it can be not so great, you know.
Which is this one?
Oh, it's great. No, it's lovely, 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 lovely.
Because I'm sweating, and I was like, what if he hates us? Because sometimes, I don't know, nobody's really hated us yet, but it took a minute.
No, I can't imagine.
Hey, you guys! I need to skate. I'm afraid.
Get out of here.
Rolling Stone business calls. Colin, thank you so much for letting me join you with this.
No problem.
It was a real pleasure, sir. And I look forward to the show here in Nashville.
You probably want to go too, right, Colin?
I probably have to go. Yeah, I think I've got another one to do. Yeah,
probably.
There was a lot of fun talking to you, and hopefully see you again, Kat, somewhere.
But maybe I'll see if I can come to Nashville and hang out with Joe. I never see Joe anymore, so he bailed on my wedding. So I'll have. I mean, he wasn't the groom or anything, but he was supposed to.
You're gonna hang out with Joe now. Who's Joe?
Yeah.
No, Joe is. He's a professional, so that's why I was like, mind your fucking shit today.
And also,
don't be too professional. We hate Joe. Is that what we're saying? Are we talking about hating Joe?
Because he's too... I didn't say anything about hating Joe. Wait a minute. How did you just turn the tables on me?